His attitude, personality, and character shone through every lyric.
When country music superstar Toby Keith passed away, the entire nation felt the loss. For decades, Toby was more than just a singer. He was a voice of resilience, patriotism, and everyday American life. From Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue to Should Have Been a Cowboy, his songs became anthems that echoed through bars, stadiums, and homes across the country. His larger-than-life personality made him one of the most iconic figures in country music history. But for all the headlines, tributes, and memorials, there was one voice noticeably missing: his wife of nearly 4 decades, Tricia Lucus. For an entire year after Toby's passing, Tricia remained silent. While fans speculated about how she was coping, she chose to grieve privately, away from the spotlight. After all, Toby Keith may have been a star to the world, but to Tricia, he was a husband, a partner, and the father of their children. The love story they shared was deeply personal, and losing him left a void that words could never truly capture. Now, 1 year later, Tricia Lucus has finally broken her silence, and what she revealed has left fans heartbroken and inspired all at once. Her words not only shed light on Toby's final days, but also on the strength, love, and quiet courage that defined their marriage. For the first time, the world is getting a glimpse into the side of Toby Keith only his family knew, the man behind the music, and the love that carried him through life's toughest battles. Long before Toby Keith became a household name, he was simply a young man with a dream, playing music in small venues across Oklahoma. And standing right beside him through the highs and lows was Tricia Lucus, the woman who would ultimately become his wife and lifelong partner. Their love story wasn't the kind of Hollywood romance written in tabloids. It was the type of grounded, enduring relationship that country songs are made of. The two first crossed paths in the early 1980s, back when Toby was still chasing his big break. At the time, Tricia was a single mother raising her daughter, Shelley, and working hard to make ends meet. Toby, with his charm, confidence, and love for music, swept her off her feet. Despite his struggles to find steady work as a musician, Tricia saw something in him that others didn't. A man with grit, determination, and a heart big enough to love her and her daughter as his own. They married in 1984, and Toby soon adopted Shelley, proving that his role as a father was just as important as his dreams of becoming a star. Over the years, their family grew with the addition of their 2 children, Crystal and Steelen. While Toby pursued a career that would eventually launch him into superstardom, Tricia created the stable foundation he needed at home. She wasn't just his wife, she was his anchor, keeping him grounded through the whirlwind of fame. As Toby's career took off in the 1990s with hits like Should Have Been a Cowboy, life changed dramatically. Suddenly, he was on the road constantly, performing to packed arenas and becoming one of country music's most recognizable figures. But while Toby was in the spotlight, Tricia preferred to remain behind the scenes, supporting her husband from the shadows. Friends and family often said that Toby could never have achieved what he did without Tricia's steady presence. Their marriage wasn't without its challenges. Fame brought pressures that could have easily pulled them apart, yet they stayed strong. Tricia's unwavering support and Toby's devotion to family helped them weather storms that many celebrity couples never survive. To Toby, success wasn't measured by record sales or awards. It was measured by the love and stability he found at home. That bond became even more important when Toby received the devastating cancer diagnosis that would eventually claim his life. While the world saw Toby as a fighter who bravely shared his health battle with the public, Tricia was the one quietly carrying much of the weight. She was by his side during doctor visits, treatments, and the long nights when the pain was unbearable. She shielded their children from the worst of it while also making sure Toby never lost hope. Looking back, it's clear that the love between Toby Keith and Tricia Lucus wasn't just a marriage, it was a partnership built on trust, sacrifice, and resilience. Their story reminds fans that behind every legendary star is often a partner whose role is just as vital, even if it goes unseen. For Tricia, the silence she kept for a year after Toby's death wasn't about avoidance. It was about honoring a love story too sacred to share until she was ready. When Toby Keith passed away, tributes poured in from across the United States. Country radio stations played his songs non-stop. Fans gathered outside of venues he once performed in, and fellow artists shared memories of the man who had become an American country icon. But through all of this, there was one person the public didn't hear from: his wife, Tricia Lucus. For an entire year, Tricia chose to grieve privately. To outsiders, her silence may have seemed strange. After all, she had shared nearly 4 decades with Toby, raising children, building a life, and standing by him through the most difficult of days. Fans wanted to hear her voice, to know how she was coping, and to learn what Toby's final days were really like. But Tricia knew that grief doesn't follow a timeline, nor does it need to be displayed for the world to see. Behind closed doors, she was doing what any wife and mother would do, trying to hold her family together in the face of unimaginable loss. Toby wasn't just her husband. He was the heart of their home. His presence filled their lives, and when it was gone, the silence was deafening. Tricia focused on comforting their children and grandchildren, keeping the family unit strong, and protecting Toby's memory from the chaos of media speculation. Friends close to the family revealed that Tricia leaned heavily on her faith during this period. Her Christian beliefs gave her strength when the weight of grief felt unbearable. It was the same faith that had guided both her and Toby throughout their marriage, and now it became the foundation she stood on when everything else seemed uncertain. During this year of silence, Tricia also took time to reflect on the extraordinary journey she and Toby had shared. From the early days when money was tight and fame was just a dream, to the years when Toby stood as one of the biggest names in country music, she had witnessed every triumph and every struggle. Each memory, whether joyful or painful, was now part of the legacy she carried forward. Her silence also served as a way to shield herself and her family from the relentless public spotlight. The media wanted answers, and fans demanded closure, but Tricia knew her grief didn't have to be put on display for anyone. Instead, she honored Toby in quiet ways, visiting the places that meant something to them, keeping his music alive within the family, and surrounding herself with loved ones who understood the depth of her loss. When she finally chose to break her silence a year later, it wasn't because she felt pressured to do so. It was because she was ready. By then, the rawness of her grief had softened enough to allow her to speak, though the pain would never fully disappear. Her words would not only provide comfort to Toby's fans, but also remind them that behind every superstar is a real family, with real love and real loss. In the end, Tricia's silence was not about distance, it was about healing. And when she finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of a year's worth of emotions, memories, and unspoken truths about the man she loved. When Toby Keith passed away, the country music world fell silent. But for Tricia Lucus, his wife of nearly 4 decades, the silence at home was even louder. For months after his passing, she kept a low profile, avoiding interviews and public appearances. To fans, this was understandable. Grief doesn't follow a schedule. And for someone who had been Toby's anchor through fame, fortune, and struggle, losing him meant losing the center of her world. Behind the scenes, Tricia leaned on her children and close friends, slowly learning to live in a world without Toby's laughter, without his larger-than-life energy filling the room. Many people who have lost loved ones say the hardest part isn't the big anniversaries or holidays, but the small everyday moments, the empty chair at the breakfast table, the silence in the car where music used to play, or the quiet nights that once ended with a simple, "Good night, I love you." Tricia faced all of that and more. While the world outside continued to celebrate her husband's legacy, fans noticed her absence from public events and tributes, but they also respected it. Social media was filled with messages of love and patience, reminding her that she didn't owe anyone her pain or her timeline for healing. Some wrote letters, sending them to the Keith family home in Oklahoma, offering condolences and stories of how Toby's music had shaped their lives. Tricia, though private, was deeply touched by the outpouring of kindness. As the months went on, Tricia focused on preserving Toby's memory in small but meaningful ways. Family dinners became a time to share old stories, to laugh at his jokes, and to play his songs at the table. She worked with Toby's team to ensure his charitable projects, especially those tied to children and veterans, continued. In her quiet way, she was making sure that even though Toby was gone, his heart remained alive in the causes he cared for most. Still, grief has a way of breaking through, no matter how strong someone appears. Those close to her say Tricia had days where the weight felt unbearable, where tears came without warning. But she also had days where she smiled, remembering the love of her life and the journey they shared together. Slowly, she began to accept that while she would never stop missing Toby, she could learn to live with his memory rather than in the shadow of his absence. This balance between public silence and private healing defined Tricia's first year without Toby. It was a year of heartbreak, yes, but also a year of resilience. And as the one-year mark approached, many wondered, would she ever speak publicly about her husband's passing? Or would her silence remain her strongest statement of love? The question was finally answered when, 1 year after Toby Keith's passing, Tricia Lucus broke her silence. In a heartfelt statement, she shared her emotions openly for the first time. Her words weren't rehearsed or polished. They were raw, honest, and deeply moving. Tricia spoke about Toby not just as a country music icon, but as her husband, her partner, and her best friend. She described how he had made their home a place of warmth and laughter, how he always managed to balance the demands of fame with the quiet, steady life they built together in Oklahoma. She admitted that living without him has been the hardest thing she has ever done. But she also expressed gratitude for the years they shared, for the family they raised, and for the love that continues to surround her even after his passing. Her message struck a chord with millions. Country music fans across the United States flooded social media with messages of support, sharing how her courage to speak out helped them process their own grief. Some had lost spouses, others parents, and they found strength in knowing that even someone like Tricia, who seemed so composed, was struggling and healing just like they were. In her statement, Tricia also made it clear that Toby's legacy isn't just in the records he sold or the awards he won, but in the lives he touched. She talked about the countless veterans, children, and families who benefited from his philanthropy, and she encouraged fans to honor Toby's memory not just by playing his songs, but by living with the same generosity he showed to others. What made her words especially powerful was their honesty. She didn't pretend to have moved on. She didn't claim that everything was okay. Instead, she acknowledged the pain, the emptiness, and the struggle of rebuilding her life without him. But she also reminded everyone that grief and love are forever intertwined, that you can carry sorrow while still carrying gratitude. For many, this was the closure they had been waiting for. Toby Keith's passing left a hole in the music world, but hearing from Tricia allowed fans to understand the human side of that loss. It wasn't just about a country superstar. It was about a husband, a father, and a man who gave his heart to his family and his fans alike. By breaking her silence, Tricia gave a final gift. She reminded the world that behind every legend is a real person, and behind every legend's family is a journey of love, grief, and resilience. Her words ensured that Toby's story would be remembered not just for the music, but for the life he lived and the love he left behind.